Okay, it's June 1st, 2011, and I'd like to ask you what your name is.
My name is Betty Murray Haar. I was born in Elmore, Ohio on February 19th, 1927, and I've lived here all my life. I was one of 7 kids, and they all lived here until they got married or moved away, and my grandparents were native Elmorans, and we lived with my grandmother in this little house on Fremont Street, and she had come from the South River Road. Her husband died, and she was married to a Norton, and they had some kind of a farm thing that blew up. I don't know what it was exactly, something steam, and he was killed. So she moved to Elmore and married Gus Buffington, and he was my mom's dad, and he was quite a character for what I've been told, and let's see what else. That's about it. We all went to Elmore School and graduated from Elmore School, and my mother was a very generous lady. She fed all the tramps that came down the railroad track. Even if we hardly had anything ourselves, Mom would always make sure that they had something. And there were a lot of them when I was a kid. And another thing that came into town when I was a kid was gypsies. And my mother, I don't know why she thought the gypsies would ever take the Murray kids, but she always said, "You be careful, don't you go with those gypsies." And when I'd walk uptown, I would be scared to death that a gypsy. I didn't know what a gypsy was, but I thought, that they were going to get me for sure. But they did come into town and try to steal from people and things. And my husband told me that they came out to his mom's house and would steal chickens and things like that. So.
When about was this?
Pardon?
About what years were these?
Well, when I was growing up, probably from maybe 1936, 37, or that age, probably. And
where'd they come from,
I don't know. They probably come from Toledo or Detroit or somewhere from the city. And there was a tourist camp out across from Tanks years ago. They had what they call a tourist camp, and they would come out there and stay too. And of course, like I say, I didn't ever see one, but there was all the talk about the gypsies that are in town. Be careful. I guess there still is they still do go places, and they're noted for stealing. That's what I've been told. I don't know for sure. So, I attended Methodist Church. I was born in that church, and I'm still a member there. And I remember several different ministers that were from Reverend Schaefer on, and some like Charlie Dybert is still. His father was a minister. He's still here in town, and we had a lot of fun at church years ago. That was a focal place to go. You just things at church because there wasn't anything going on. Now when they have anything at church, there's so many things going. You're lucky if you get half a dozen people to it. So, but like I say, when we were kids, we were tickled to death to go.
They had a lot of social events and.
What?
They had a lot of social events at the churches.
Oh yeah, a lot of social events. They always had something going on all the time. They had MYF, and they had banquets. It just seemed like there's always something going on. And of course, we went probably mostly because they always said it's just good food. I don't know, but. Let's see. What else would you like?
Is there any other organizations that you?
I've been a life member of the American Legion Auxiliary, and let's see. I was in a Modern Moms. It was a mother's club, and
there's a lot of those around.
Yeah, there were 3 clubs in Elmore, but I belong to Modern Moms, and let's see. I belong to some other things too, but right offhand I can't think. But. That was quite the thing with all those mothers clubs. We tried to do a lot of things for the school and things, and we did what we could. It wasn't very much money involved or no money makers or anything. But, and I can remember when the homecoming was on this street here by the library years ago, and before that it was downtown. They had this homecoming, and the streets were packed. I mean, literally packed. You couldn't walk. People would come from all over for these homecomings.
What they have at the homecomings, besides the parade?
Oh, I don't even know if they had much of a parade. I don't know. They just had all kinds of booths downtown, and they had a merry-go-round where the parking lot is across from where the post office is. And I recall, I don't know, we didn't have much money, but I must have had a nickel to go. And if you grabbed a brass ring, you could get a free ride. And I grabbed this ring, and I thought it was a brass ring, and it wasn't. It was just a ring. And they stopped the merry-go-round, put me off, and I was so embarrassed. But I thought it was a brass ring. But I do know the streets were just packed, and I think people just come home to see other people, then. And then they moved it back here, and then towards last it kind of fizzled out. It just, after the World War II, we still worked in that. We had chicken sandwiches from the auxiliary, and we went out and bought the chickens and killed the chickens and picked it off the bones and everything to make chicken sandwiches. But it was fun. It was camaraderie, and they always gave a car away, and then a car was worth $700. So I can remember when John Lower won a car. I thought, oh my God, but they had sold tickets probably 10 cents a piece. I don't know anymore, And we did a lot of nice, fun things, though, when we were kids. Like the Girl Scouts always had something. I remember having a Washington tea. Our Girl Scout leader then was Mrs. Paul Hartsook, and she was her husband was the ag teacher, and they lived over on Rice Street, and she tried to teach us fancy etiquette. Pretty hard for a 12-year-old or whatever we were to go to fancy tea, dress up the best we could, but it was fun. And another thing when I was growing up, we had a multiplex. It was a machine, a factory where the ice cream on the left is now in there, and that was very productive. 2 shifts, I know at least 2 shifts, and one of the men who, I don't know, he didn't own it, but he was some big wig in it, was Nelson Johnson, and he lived across the street from us, and they had a little boy named Gordon, and I babysit for this Gordon, and every Sunday I would take him to Sunday school, and they had a big fancy, they called it a perambulator or something. I don't remember what it was, but I took Gordon, and when I was we used to go to Oak Harbor for our 8th grade graduation, and all the county went there, and you had to do somebody had to do some kind of talent, and I remember we had a fellow named George Detzel, and he played the accordion, and he just stood, I can still see him yet, he just stood up there and just played that. It was just like a robot, didn't smile, didn't make any facial things, but I didn't have the money to buy a dress. Everybody had to buy a dress, so Mrs. Johnson took me to Fremont and bought me a dress for $2, which I was thrilled to death. I thought I was the best dressed kid there. So I know what it is to be poor, and that's why I like to help it, like Friendly Center in Toledo and Cherry Street Mission, because to me that's important, because a lot of good things come out of there. Maybe people don't realize it, but I go every month to Friendly Center and collect clothes and things and food articles and to take up there. We go once a month. Several from our church still go.
Do you want to tell me more about your family, about your brothers, maybe?
Yeah, my oldest brother, his name was Leo, but they called him Barney, and I think they called him Barney because he used to go to Forest Park with a fellow that owned the ponies, and his name was Barney Stahl. Maybe you've heard of that. And his wife had horses, and he had ponies, and he'd earn a little bit of money for putting a kid on a horse and walking around for a few minutes. And later he moved to California after the war. He was a meat cutter. He went to Kurt's Meats in Toledo and learned to be a meat cutter. And he moved to Put in Bay after he did that. And he originally moved to Detroit after World War II because that's where the gal he married was from. And they didn't want to stay in the city, so they came out here, and he went to Kurt's Market, and then he went to Put in Bay for about 2 years and decided they were going to California. So they moved to California, and my oldest sister was Viola, and she married a talker from Woodville, and now she has maybe you might know her daughter is Anita O'Connor. She's a gifted and talented teacher at Woodville, and the other girl is a nurse in Adrian, and she's very much into doing things for other people. She goes on a medical mission twice a year to Mexico, and we have a fit because it's such a bad place where they go. But she said they don't go out on the street without a man going with them because people are killed on the streets there and everything. And of course, my other brother, Cork, he was next in line with me, and his son is now the fire chief in Elmore, Michael, and Bill is dead. Well, of course, everybody, but my sister and I are the only ones left of the family. But we all get together yet. Every Christmas we get together, and once in the summer, and they all show up, all the cousins and stuff, and it's just kind of fun, and we talk about, the old days, how my mom and dad did, and they had nothing, really. They were dirt poor, but they had more than money could buy because they, and at Christmas time, I think now when my grandkids want some expensive thing, Mom and Dad would give the kids each a pair of socks, and they were so excited, they thought that was the best thing they ever had, So, and my sister Blanche, she moved to Flint, Michigan. She was quite an athlete in the Elmore School. She graduated in 1937, and she played basketball for the school, and was in the track, and in fact, she's in some of the pictures. You probably have her in the library. But she was the only one that was very.
Was she in the one where they won the state track?
Or something.
Some of them went to Olympic trials. Was that?
Yes.
Was she one of them? Or
I think Blanche was in that. Probably she was with Lucille Peterson and Ida Mae Slates.
Yeah.
Yes. And they would go to Lakeside, and oh my gosh, that was like going to the moon nowadays, because they had such an old bus, and my dad would always go down the bus and wait for her to get off of it. And it's probably, that Elmore's boys went to the state in 1941, and I was very fortunate to have a friend, Fudge Stone. You've probably heard of her. She graduated in 1946, and she was one of our Lone Ranger gang. And her dad and Bill Watson, who was a barber here in town, went to that game, and they took Fudge and I along, and they took us to the Worthington Inn. I can still say that. Oh my gosh, I thought, what a wonderful place to eat, really fancy. And then we went on to Columbus to the game, but it seemed like it took us forever, and it probably did, the old car. He had a good car, but I mean, back then cars didn't go like they do now. And I could go on. I've got pages about the Lone Ranger Club, but you don't want to hear all that.
Well, I want to hear a little bit. But what is it?
Lone Ranger Club was I don't know, we used to listen to Lone Ranger on the radio. Bond Bread Company sponsored the Lone Rangers. So Dr. Ridenauer and the Murray kids and Jeanette Buck and Kenny Buck and Fudge Stone. Her mother was a practical nurse, and years ago, nurses would go out when ladies have their baby, and they would stay a couple weeks with the family and do things. And we had the run of the house. I mean, we had the upstairs for the clubhouse, and it was one thing after the other. We had somebody always had some bright ideas, and Fudge decided that we should prepare for the winter by making grape juice. So us kids walked out 163, past benches down 163 to a house there. Oh my gosh, I know their name. Customers lived there, and Fudge's older sister was a friend of Mrs. Customauer, and she let us pick grapes. So we picked these grapes, and then somebody brought us home because we had baskets of grapes, and we decided we would make grape juice for the winter. Nobody knew anything about it, but we put all this grapes and stuff and we took it upstairs. And I don't know how many days later, Fudge's mother came home, and the ceiling was full of grape juice. I mean, they had all exploded. But we didn't sterilize the jars. We didn't do anything, and they fermented, and up they went. But she didn't get too upset over that. And Doc Rynar was he always wanted to do something. And why? Always money-making projects. And Fudge's uncle Louis Cly lived on a corner, and he was a salesman for Mary Lee Candies in Toledo. And in the summer, he would have samples that they got white, chocolate gets kind of white. He'd given us kids, so we'd go around trying to sell those candies. We must have looked like rag muffins going around, and maybe we'd sell 2 pieces for a penny or something, but we'd get a few cents. And we had a circus in the backyard, and Doc Rynar had a wonderful Southern mother. She was very quiet, but sometimes she would come out the back door at the parsonage, and because his father was a minister too, and she would say, "My stars, what are you kids doing now?" Because she never knew what we were going to do next. We had a circus in the backyard, and we was very inventive back then. We didn't have the things to play with. And we had a Monopoly game that was set up permanently in Fudge's up around her dining room table because their mother was gone, and we could never win. And Doc Rynar won all the time. And I thought, we just couldn't believe. Well, we thought we're just dumb. Well, when it was all over, we finally decided how he was winning. He brought his own money from home, and he always had more money than nobody else, and we couldn't figure it out because, and then let's see, what else did we do? There used to be a playground down at the school. It was supervised playground when it was during the Depression, and there was a minister's daughter by the name of Nellie Jean Cooper, and he was a minister of the old German Methodist Church, and she was a playground director, and we had like jacks, and we had jack tournaments and things like that, but it was like certain hours every day or whatever it was, and we looked forward to doing that too because we thought it was so much fun.
I got to stop you there for a second.
All right.
We're going to interview with Betty Haar, and you were talking about the playground before,
Club.
the Lone Ranger Club.
We had, and Fudge had a cat, and the cat wasn't exactly the cleanest thing in the world, so she decided that we should have a janitor. So all the boys wanted to be, they fought for being janitor. So finally, I think Kenny, my brother Cork, and all the brothers were there, and Kenny won out. And he said, "Well, what are my duties?" And she said, "You have to clean the cat poop up." And Kenny's been dead a few years now, but every time I'd see him, first thing he would say is about the Lone Ranger Club, because I think that must have been the highlight of our life when we were kids. And Fudge's dad was a mechanic. He worked in Toledo, so she wanted to drive, so she'd get in the car, and all of us kids would push her out of the garage, and then we'd have to push her back in, and then we'd have to sweep where the tracks were so our dad didn't know anybody was in the car, and just things like that. But nobody seemed to mind. They just, and then we had a gal that Winifred Jeremy, and she wanted to join the club. I talk about, what do you want to say? I don't know what I want to say, but I can't tell you, But anyhow, we were discriminating, and that's what I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, Paul said, well, we're going to have to make some kind of a rule how they can join. So he told her they had a big barn right next to where the house was next here to the library. There was a house there, and then behind there was a barn. And Doc said, if you can jump out of that upstairs window, you can join a club. Well, she couldn't jump, so she couldn't join the club. So, but he was very picky who was in that club. But was never any bad stuff went on or any things like that. It was always just fun. We never knocked at a door. We just would go to the back door and holler, whoever we were calling. They'd come to my house and holler, Betty, Betty, and we'd come out. But no, I don't remember anybody ever knocking at a door. And we didn't serve food or anything like that. It was just, and when it came noon, we'd all go home and eat our lunch and whatever, And one time, a family, the father committed suicide, and Mrs. Dr. Whitty, who was a veterinarian, Dr. Whitty, his wife was head of the Red Cross in probably Ottawa County, maybe, I don't know. But anyhow, she decided that this Lone Ranger Club should go out and collect stuff for the poor. So we started out. We got to one place, and I'll never forget it. I imagine we looked like urchins ourselves. But anyhow, this fella came to the door, and we told him what we were doing, and he says, well, are you some of the children? And we said no, but it was just so funny. I thought, and we've got a sewing machine. We had Whitty's whole garage packed full of stuff that we collected with her supervision, So I guess those kind of things are bred in you or born in you or something. And this went on until, I suppose, till we went to high school. 7th and 8th grade, we still were fooling around with that kind of stuff. But one night, after Paul Reiner became a doctor, he made a call to our house. Our second son was sick, and that's when doctors made house calls. He opens up the door and he hollers, "Hi-oh, Silver." And I said, what kind of a professional man in any other place but Elmore would do something like that, And so it never got out of our brain that we're the Lone Ranger Club. And I think you have some of the, probably some of the, if Doc Reiner or somebody gave some of the clippings and stuff, it tells about the Lone Ranger Club having a potluck supper and things like that. So, but I feel today that kids do not know how to play. They just don't have the fun that we had with nothing. And every night when the train came in at 20 after 8, every kid went home. Our parents would say, when the train comes in at night, it came from Lindsay and went on and picked the mail up, we'd go home. Nobody had to come and get us. We just knew we had to go home. And a lot of when I got older, a lot of the fellows from Lindsay would hop the train and come to Elmore. In the summer it was, when the light was long, and they'd look for some of their girlfriends or whoever, and then they'd walk down the railroad track home, because it wasn't that far, I guess, by the railroad track. And I don't know if anybody ever married anybody like that, but I know a lot of the fellows that did. To this day, I talked to some of them. They said, remember, and I don't know. It just seemed like times were so much easier then, and so much to do. And I was in the class plays at school. We always had class plays, and everybody got along fine. Dora Coleman was our teacher, and she was a play director, and she's very firm, but I really respected her. And but she could be funny too. I was talking to my neighbor Bob Eichel the other day, and I said, he's really into government and history and stuff, and I said, I'll never forget when I was in government class, and I was dead serious. They were talking about the closed door policy. Here I am, a senior in high school. I said, well, what do they do behind closed doors anyhow? And of course, even Dora Coleman she broke up. She couldn't take it, because I didn't know what, if they went in and made decisions, they come out and made a decision. I didn't know, but she always talked about that too, about me saying that, and I really, and let's see what else. I took art in school. We had a wonderful art teacher, Miss Fuller, and she made a painting of me, but somewhere along the line I can't find it. And I've loved art ever since, and I'm not an artist, but I mean I can do artistic things, and I like that. And oh, let's see, anything else you'd like to know?
How did you meet your husband?
Well, I met my husband at, I was a junior in high school, and we went down to the Fremont Fair, and we met a bunch of girls from Elmore. I don't know how we got there anymore. I can't imagine, but we got there, and my husband was there with a bunch of guys, and we were in the horse barn, and I did not like him at all. And then he was going with my friend Joyce Eggert, Nancy Eggert's sister-in-law, and I can remember he was home, and then he joined the paratroopers. He enlisted and went before he graduated. He graduated, but he left school, and he came home on a furlough when we were seniors, and he, back then, remember that Boone's Farm? You won't know that. Kids used to drink Boone's wine.
They still
I
do.
never, you know,
They
remember?
still do.
Well, anyhow, it was probably 98
That's
cents a
cheap.
bottle or something. And I didn't drink any, but Joyce drank some, and she got sick. And it was in the spring, and the water was over the roads, and we were down by Oak Harbor, and we got stuck, and of course, Joyce wouldn't go with Cal because without me, so I went along like a tag along. And anyhow, it was 4 o'clock in the morning. We came home, and my dad was furious. He said, "Where the heck have you been?" Oh well, okay, you know, he believed me, but the next day Joyce had a hangover, is what she had, because she never drank before, and she was so sick. And Dora came and said, "Joyce, I think you better get home. I think you're getting a flu." So she went home, and we laughed because it wasn't a flu, it was that wine she drank. And then after that, Cal went to the service, and he wrote to me, just friendly letters. Of course, I wrote to a lot of servicemen. I mean, there were a lot of, nothing romantic, just I like to write letters. In fact, last night I was looking through my scrapbook and all the different Valentines and stuff I got from different fellas in the service and where they were going. And when Cal got out of the service, he was around town here, and he lived in Lindsay, but he stayed with his aunt out on Holt Harrigan Road. And my sister saw him uptown. She said, "Oh, you ought to see Betty. You ought to see Cal. Har's cute." I said, "I don't. No, nothing. I want nothing to do." So I was going with a sailor, a real handsome sailor from Gibsonburg by the name of Kenny Failhaber, and I went to the parade on Memorial Day with him here, and everybody was, "Oh my God, where'd she get him? Good looking, real tall, dark." And I went with him to some family, but unfortunately he wanted more than I wanted to give him, and I was didn't believe in some of the stuff he wanted to do, and so we broke up. But he really, and anyhow, then Cal's aunt did not have electricity where he was living, and he wanted to build a trailer. And how he got to my dad's house, I don't know, but he asked my dad if he could build that trailer in our backyard because he needed to use electric saws or whatever it was. And I was a beautician, and I worked in Genoa, and my dad said, "Betty, you ought to go with him. He's a great guy." I said, "No." I just didn't want to. I don't know how it happened, but somehow he talked me, and one night I was home, and he talked me into going to Gibsonburg homecoming with him. So it was very gentle. So I thought, he's not so bad, you know. And that's what it happened. And he has been a good man. He's been very helpful and a good father, and he helps a lot of people now that you wouldn't believe the things he does for people. Never charges them and doing things like that. So it's been a good marriage, and 65 years almost. So it's pretty good, I think. And we had 3 boys, and our oldest son Ron was a very, very good athlete in Elmer. He excelled in all sports, and he passed away 3 years ago this month. And he moved to Florida. And our second son John was a amateur magician and the Boy Scout leader here for many years, and he produced I don't know how many Eagle Scouts. He was always into the Boy Scouts. Ron became an Eagle Scout, but John was Life Scout. And our third son didn't want anything to do with Boy Scouts, so all he thought about was working. And now he has 2 boys, Hunter and Cody, and his wife owns a speed trap in Woodville, and he works on the railroad, and they got a small farm out in the country, and they fool around the farm, and let's see.
You said that your one brother was Santa here for a while and was on.
Was what?
You said that your brother here played Santa in Elmore for
Oh yeah,
a number of
Bill
years.
Cork.
Yeah.
My brother Cork. This one that is.
You want to show the paper?
Here.
Here we can kind of show it up to the camera here. You can
I'm
talk
going
about it.
to. I don't know. You may have that paper here because I have a couple of them. I got one in plastic at home, and everybody knew him. He went all over playing Santa. He's been dead for about 5 years now. And if you want a picture of this must have been in the 50s. Early 50s, I think. Maybe Charlie Reimers might know when he comes. I don't know. Or you could ask him, but I'm not going to leave that here. But I'm kind of believing it was like maybe I would say about 1950, 49 or 50. If I had, but it's in pretty good shape yet.
Where'd you get it? Just always been at your
I
house?
just always had. I'm a terrible person for keeping stuff. I'll tell you. When I die, they're going to have to get a dumpster. But anything else you'd like to?
Yeah. You want to tell me a little about the businesses that were around town when you were growing up?
Al Depker had the welcome in, and that was most wonderful fun. We always hung out there. We had a nickel to spend. We'd buy a Coke or whatever, and he always loved the kids. And one night he took I don't know how many in his car. We went to Sandusky, to St. Mary's to a ball game, and Jack Welsh, who was killed in World War II, he was older than us, but he hung around up there too, and he went with us, and he always called me Sniffles, and I don't know why, and he called Jack Damshotter 7 shirts, because Jack never wore a jacket. He wore, I don't know how many shirts. He had the layered look long before it was popular, and we'd go, when I was a little bit older then, we went into Hartman's. Like, if we had 10 cents, when we were seniors or juniors, we could go into Hartman's and get a Pepsi and a little bag of chips for 10 cents. And, of course, there were different grocery stores back then, too. We had 3 or 4 grocery stores, and the Kroger store was one of them, and A.J. Wise and Gail Weidinger's. And I can remember my mom giving me a quarter when we were kids to go down to Weidinger's and get 25 cents worth of lunch meat. You can believe how much you got for 25 cents, you know. But now it's different. And, of course, Lucille Peterson had a beauty shop upstairs above it's where, next to the Mantiques, there used to be a telephone office down below. And she had a beauty shop up there. And there was another beauty shop where there's a carpet place now, I think, and then the dry cleaners went in there, and we had bakeries and things like that wouldn't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't afford them. And let's see, what else? Always had the garage was always here, and there was a garage across there from the library. Lincoln Damshotter had a garage, and I would say my most fond memories from the Welcome Inn, because Al never.
That's where it all went.
Yeah, we could go in there, and if we didn't have, and I can remember on Sunday a bus would pull up, and they'd get out, and that whole bus would go in there and eat. She had chicken dinners on Sunday. Of course, we never ate them or anything, and I imagine at that time it was probably $1.50 maybe or something for a chicken dinner. But the bus would pull up there, and of course Gearing's drugstore was wonderful too. They always had such 2-for-penny candies and things like that. So and at school we had there was a candy shop right on the school grounds. Mr. Kemp had a candy shop, and we could buy candy out there if we wanted it, nickel candy bars, and he sold pencils and things like that. He was a bus driver also, and it was right there on the very corner where the FFA building is now, because all those buildings weren't there, no stadium or anything. And we thought Mr. Kemp, that was the best thing that ever happened. Had a nickel, you could go get something. So as far as that's about all I can tell you about restaurants.
Do you remember much about the elevator? Like,
Oh,
when it caught
yes.
fire?
Oh, I was here when the elevator burned down, absolutely. And there was a hay shed beyond it. They used to load cattle on the trains. And I think probably they quit doing it maybe about the time we were in the Lone Ranger Club, because they had like a little stall like that we took over as a hut. And we went around and garbage and picked a rug up, and we had all kinds of stuff in there where they used to load the cattle up. And but I think they must have cut that out during the war, probably, because the war started in 41. And we played in the park always, and like I say, we'd walk down the railroad track and pick wild berries, and we'd go down to Sugar Creek and just do all kinds of things that I don't see kids do those anymore. And I have grandkids, and they don't do that stuff. We went mushroom hunting always, and so we had a lot of fun.
You said you worked in Genoa before. Did you ever work around here?
Yes, I had my own beauty shop.
Oh, good.
I worked for Helen St. John for a while, and I worked at Genoa right after we got married, and then when we built our house, I had a shop in my house, and we sold that house and moved up the hill, and I had a beauty shop for several years there, and then I went to work for Brush Wellman because my hands would not take. The solutions used to be a lot tougher than they are today, and I used to have, my hands were actually raw, and I got some kind of infection, and I got it settled in my elbow, and the doctor told me I had to get out of that business. She just couldn't do it anymore. So then I wanted to work at Brush Wellman because I had Ron in college and needed the money, and so, but I loved the beauty shop business. I had people that regular, and like it would be like a reunion on Saturday morning. We'd all the same people, and they'd bring food to eat, and they were all friends. It was different, So, and I had same customers for years and years, and I missed that for a long time. And I still have people. I have a lady in Lindsay said, I'll never get the haircut like you used to give me. And I thought, I didn't think I was that good of a hair cutter. But she says, oh, Betty, you gave me the best haircuts. And I don't know if you know Mary Lou Cruz. Well, her mom, Helen, was one of my customers. And she always said to her, oh, I never, after you quit, my hair never been the same. So it makes you feel good, you know. But
do you have any interesting stories about people in town, like any of your friends or anything interesting happened to other people?
Well, I can remember, I think it's not a friend, but I remember there's an old man called Ernie Howard that used to peddle the community newspaper. There was a free paper, and this old man, I was scared to death of him, but he was gentle as a lamb, I guess. But I can still see him in my mind, too. He was kind of bent over he was just, and you probably heard of Jack Pickard. Well, he was one of the characters of town, I think. Very brilliant man, but he had measles when he was about 6 or something, and it affected his mind somehow. But he was a good guy. He spent a lot of time on, we had a hill, and kids all came to coast on our hill, and one New Year's Day we had 100 people on at our backyard, and Jack Pickard would be like a sergeant. He would let the little kids first, you know. He wouldn't let and he was really smart as doing things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And well, like I say, Doc Reiner went on to be a doctor, and some of my friends were nurses, and we turned out pretty darn good for depression age kids. I had several more school teachers, my friends, and we still get together once in a while. And like I say, I go to the alumni banquet. Somebody said, "What do you want to go there for?" I said, "I like to see the old people." They said, "What do you think you are?" I said, "There's a lot older than I am. Go, you know."
Mm-hmm.
And it's very interesting and I remember when this Atwater boy drowned. That was a real tragedy. He was my brother's age, down by the golf course in the spring. This little Buddy Atwater, and that was a real tragedy. You know, all the kids were scared to death that they were going to drown. And my mom and dad said, "Don't you go near that creek," and all this and that. I have to tell you a cute story about my brother Bill. He was the bad boy of the bunch. Always doing. He was either shooting a slingshot or somebody or something. But he got mad at my mom, and he told Mom, he says, "Tonight you won't see me anymore. I'm going to let the train run over me." And my mom, you know, just all day long couldn't find Bill. They looked and could not find him. And all us kids were crying. We were looking on the railroad track and all this and that. That year, when we were kids, we had a round oak stove in our house. And in the spring, when the summer was, you would take that out and put it in the shed, and then Mom would wallpaper, because we'd stand behind there when we were in the winter and get dressed and rub the wallpaper off. You can imagine, it's 4 or 5 little kids. So then she would wallpaper. Oh, that kid went out and crawled in that stove in the shed and fell asleep, and we never found him. We had the cops and everybody else looking for him. Here he was sleeping in that old stove. And but tragedy. When Ron was a senior in high school, there were 3 kids killed out of his class. They were going somewhere, and Ron was usually with them, but that day he had something to do at school, and he said, "No, I can't go." But maybe they wouldn't have got killed if that split second, if he would have gotten in a car or something. But 3 of his friends were all killed that day, and that was tragedy. And of course, there's always been, it seems like every year some kids are killed in the class. But then they had one boy that died of cancer in their class of 66. So before they graduated, there were 4 of them gone, and that was kind of a tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
But we always went to every basketball game, and everything that was kids were in. Sometimes we wondered where we were going to get our next nickel, but we went anyhow, you know, and we loved it. We followed the sports, and I think that's important too. I think today too many people just drop their kids off and don't do the things they should do. Like, you know, go with them, because and like Boy Scouts, we put on Boy Scout dinners for John when John was little, and we couldn't get some of those parents to do a doggone thing. They just said, "Oh, we were too busy," you know. But we did it, and I'm glad we did, because when John passed away, you wouldn't believe how many Boy Scout leaders came. The church was packed over here. They came from Lima and Findlay and all over, because he was in Wood Badge and things like that. And I can remember when the war started. We used to walk to Woodville on Sunday afternoon to go to the Limelight Theater, and we were in there, and it came across the screen that Pearl Harbor had been bombed, and oh my God, we were all petrified. just came out right on home. We thought the Japs were going to be right here in Elmore, you know, but we just got home, and that was a very much of a tragedy for kids that age. And all during my high school year, it was all, you know, and kids now go to Jamaica and all over for their senior trip. I said, we went to Peterson Park. We thought we were going to the moon, you know. We packed a lunch and went to Peterson Park, and then we went over to the airport. It was Toledo Airport then, and now it's Metcalf Field. But we went there and watched the planes, some of the Army planes and stuff stopped. But it's so different today. I mean, like I bet the kids today, if they were saying, well, for your senior class, you're going to go to somewhere for a picnic, I bet they would, no, go, I don't think. I don't think there'd be that loyalty. But we did it because we really thought, it was the thing to do. So, but as far as anybody else, Belle Johnson, of course, she was the black lady in town, and to me, she was a sweetheart. I can still see her too with her little red wagon going uptown, and she always wore bloomers and a short dress, and she'd stop at my mother's house, and she was not bigoted at all. And I had an aunt that was she'd just scream at my mother because my mother was friends with Belle Johnson, and Aunt Mary said, I'm not even going to say what she'd say. Blank Belle, get her, don't you let her stop there. Mom said, I don't care what you think, Mary. I'm going to be friends with Belle. And we used to go to her house, Mom and I, at night. She had the cutest little house you ever saw. It was so cute inside. I often wondered whatever happened to the stuff in it, because I can still see she had like a bed in the wall, kind of, and it was so different from anything I have seen. Really pretty little things in the house, but she was quite a character. And the Holtons, of course, he was the janitor of school, old Mr. Holton, and they had a boy named Joe. He was, they called him Mongoloid, but they don't do that now. They call him
Down syndrome.
Down syndrome, and this Joey was so cute. He'd come into school and just walk in the classrooms. He never basically went to school, but he would just go and sit there like nobody thought a thing of it, you know. And they were very well respected people, but they're all gone now, and you know. And see, I can't think of anybody else different.
You were talking about the woman that lived on this lot, the library lot.
Cora Cole. I really didn't know her. I never remember seeing her, but all I can remember is they all come in the spring because this place was just loaded. I mean, it was just like purple all over, and we'd pick violets. And then there was another old man that lived on Rice Street. His name was George Sourwine. I don't know if you've probably heard of that name too, but he lived in a little old house. After you cross the park there's a big brick house in the corner, and then it would be the next lot, and it was sitting back in, and he was a nice old man too. And then another old man that I really liked because he used to give us gum was Louis Jeremy. He every day of his life, I never saw that man anything but dressed up. He had a suit on. I don't know if you've ever seen that. The show that Boss Hogg was in it. Oh, what's it called?
Dixie Hazard?
Yeah. Well, anyhow, he was kind of portly like that, but he always wore black, and I'm sure he had a hat on, but he always had tea-berry gum. And when he'd come up, he'd go by, he'd say, "Good morning, Johnny Jump Up." He'd call every kid Johnny Jump Up, and he said, "Well, tea-berry gum." And I don't even know if you can buy tea-berry gum anymore. But he gave us a stick of gum, and boy, we thought that was really nice. They lived across from the church. And
didn't he have a couple businesses?
I don't know.
His brother, Fred, maybe.
His son, Fred, had a shoe thing in Woodville. I don't know what.
I think he owned the Opera House, I think.
maybe something with
Maybe.
that. I don't remember. And when the medicine shows came to town, oh my God, that was wonderful when they'd come and have see, the old schoolhouse was on between 4th and 5th Street, and when I was growing up, they, I don't remember it being torn, when they tore it down, because the new school opened in 1929, and I would have been just a couple of years old. But that laid there for years, and I can remember, though, when they started ripping it down, Newt Overmeyer, and then they had horses, and they put ropes around, and I can still, in my mind, I can hear somebody hollering, "Hold her, Newt, she's a rarin'," and I thought, what in the, they meant, it was moving, I guess, and it was must have been a farmer's talk, and that stayed there for years. Those bricks lay there, and us kids would make houses out of those. They never made you clean anything up years ago. And we loved that too, to have all that. And but like I say, they just left those. I don't know. Then after the war, they cleaned it up and built houses in there. But we just there was a family by the name of Judge Allen. I'm sure you've heard of the judge. They lived on the next street over, and they had two very severely retarded, mentally and physically, girls, and every day Mrs. Allen would walk those girls, and they were almost, I say, animal-like. They'd hit their heads, and of course we never made fun of them or anything, because that was my mom would say, but every day she'd walk those girls down to Maple Street, way down past the school and around for exercise every day, that woman. And I think after they died, the judge died first, and I think Gertrude died later. And I think those girls had to go to some place like Columbus or something. I've often wondered what happened. It was Doris and Jean. I can still see them, but she always had them dressed nice, but they'd hit their heads a little like this, and it was pathetic. But nobody made fun of them. Nobody did things like that. But it was just, we took it for granted, that's the way they were. But I don't think kids were like that when we were kids. When somebody's different, we didn't care. But I know right now I hear talk at school about this jerk or this, what do they call, I don't know what they call them, but they don't call them a very nice name. But I don't think the families have taught respect. Like, my mom would tell us now, when Mrs. Allen takes those girls by there, you just say hello to her, and we never ever, did anything to be nasty to them. But I don't know when they left, but I think it was after I was married they still were there. So that's about the Holtons and the Bell Johnson, and I think that's about the only people that I can really.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
One last thing that I would like to ask you that we've been asking everybody is, what were you doing during the blizzard of '78?
Well, I'll tell you what I was doing. I was working at Brush Wellman, the 3rd shift, and when I left for work, it was the most beautiful night. It was just so still and beautiful, and nothing, no rain, no anything. And we always had our lunch break at 3 o'clock, and I had a good friend by Ida. Her name was Ida Contop, and the fellows worked in the inspection came out and said, how the barometer is really dropping, and that maybe we ought to go home. And so Ida called the sheriff, and she said, do you think it's safe for us to go home? He says, well, where do you live? And she said, well, I live in Oak Harbor, and Betty lives in Elmore. He said, if you go right now, he says, you will be all right. But he says, don't wait. And so we went right away and changed our clothes and went home. And when I went home, I can recall, it was just still, and I could see my tracks, and the tracks you could just see where the cars had gone. They left perfect tracks. And I went down Elmore East, 590 Elmore East. I usually went the River Road, but I thought, well, I'll go that way. And I got home and I come in the bedroom and Kel said, "What's the matter? Are you sick?" I said, "No." I said, "It's going to be a terrible blizzard." He said, "Well, I have to go to work at 5 in the morning." He says, "I'm going to work." I said, "You're not." "Oh, yeah." And well, he set the alarm at 5. He could not get out of the garage. It had, in that little bit of time, it had really gone. And of course, then the turnpike was shut down, of course. And then we had men and people sleeping in the church basement over here because there was no place to go. And they recruited us to bring food over and they'd have to come on snowmobiles to get the food to go over there. And then another bad storm was when I graduated in 1945. There was a terrible storm. Bay Bridge was closed. I don't know if maybe somebody has told you about that, but it was, one house had, I don't know how many people in it, I don't recall, but there were so many people it ruined their carpets and everything in their house, but it was a terrible storm. And I don't think in January of that year we went to school over 8 days maybe, but we never had to make it up. They didn't make you make up school then, but I know the bread trucks couldn't get out from Toledo, and it was really bad. Nobody went anywhere. People didn't go to work, but it wasn't the same kind of a blizzard. But it was, because I had been babysitting over in Woodville for my sister's kids, and they used to go to Rainbow Gardens, and Viola said, "Bill, you better take Betty home because this is about noon, because it's a really bad storm coming." And so he took me home, and I'm glad he did because probably couldn't have come home for a few days. But but the blizzard was the worst that I can ever remember. But I don't hope we never have another one.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add before we end?
I can't. I'm just so glad I was brought up when I was brought up in a small town, and how people are so nice to each other here and come together when there's a tragedy, and and no peer pressure. Nobody seems to me any better than anybody else. It doesn't. And that's one thing I've instilled in my kids and my grandkids, especially my grandkids, because I told them, well, if somebody has got a problem, help them. Because I said, don't make fun of them and things like that. And I think they'll do that, because just in fact, yesterday, or Decoration Day, my grandson Hunter said to me, he met Mr. Down, that's the ag teacher's mother and father from Shelby, Ohio. They thought he was such a well-mannered young man, and they said to him, you must have really great parents. And I guess Hunter said yes, and grandparents too, so that made us feel good, because they spent a lot of time with us. But I tell you, I used to take those kids in the car, and I taught them the Gettysburg Address, and then Flanders Field, and we had to sing the Star Spangled Banner in America when they were little. That's all we did, is sing and repeat and do that kind of stuff. And those kids still can repeat all that stuff that
Wow.
And I think that's great. Because I'm very patriotic. I cry at parades, and it makes me mad, but I can't help it. And I took them out to senior citizens when they were little, and they did all that stuff, and people couldn't believe it. 6 or 8 and 4-year-old could, do all that stuff, but they did it in Flanders Field, and most kids don't know anything about Flanders Field, So I've tried to be a good grandma, but my other kids are in Florida, see.
Yeah.
So, but anyhow, I've had a good life.
Well, good. Well, thank you for sharing it with
I'm
us.
glad.
And we really appreciate this.
I hope maybe you can find out something. You have this copy here? Do you
No, I
think?
don't.